that saved a soul like me. I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see.
One of our most popular It's Great to Be Alive programs featured Native American operatic tenor White Eagle, a man who had fought alcoholism and drug abuse and had won the battle, a man who brought joy to millions through his music. The future beckoned brightly.
His grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun.
But White Eagle now has another burden to bear, another mountain to climb. Today, a bit of the sparkle is gone from his eyes. A touch of weariness replaces the spring in his step. This noble eagle, a man whose spirit soared, is now like an eagle with a broken wing, the broken wing of AIDS. As you'll see, though, even AIDS hasn't dampened Eagle's desire to help others, to speak out. And he does just that as he reminds us once again that it's great to be alive. That powerful voice has been enjoyed through radio and television, in churches and concert halls, outdoors at Mount Rushmore, and indoors at the inauguration of President George Bush. Pretty powerful stuff for the son of an itinerant minister, a boy raised in the hills and prairies of South Dakota. It was a long and exciting road that White Eagle traveled from the Rosebud Reservation to the stage of Carnegie Hall. A road that took him from a boyhood feeling that he didn't fit in to stardom as one of the nation's premier tenors. As freely as he shared his voice with millions, so did he also share his story of recovery from alcoholism and drug abuse. I remember the sense of wonderment in his voice as he spoke of one particular incident.
It has changed every single part of my life. Every single area of my life is transformed. Not just a little different, transformed. It is turning wine into water. I mean, that's what's happened in my life. It's been amazing. The awareness that I have of the things around me. I remember the day at the pavilion. I guess it was about day 16, 17. I was looking, it's up in northwest of Montreal, Canada, on a beautiful little lake, right? And I was standing out on the balcony, looking out over this lake, and all of a sudden, there were a lot of paddle boats in this lake. You get in and you paddle around. I never did that. But there were people who did. I began to notice, and I turned to one of my friends, and I said, "Where did they get all the paddle boats with all the different colors?" And they said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Look at all the colors. There's a red one and a green one and a blue one and a white one over there." And he said, "They've always been there." And it was as if my soul had opened up. And all of a sudden, there was color in the world. where there had only been black and white. I'll never forget that moment. It was truly a spiritual awakening. Now, I want every day of my life to be just like that. And the exciting thing is it can be. It can be.
It was a remarkable story of recovery that White Eagle shared with us in his first It's Great to Be Alive. But then things changed. He started having trouble breathing, and it reached a critical point at a concert in Alliance, Nebraska.
And the concert went well. I had to stop between every song just to catch my breath, breathe. When I got home, I decided I should go to the doctor. So I went to an asthma specialist. She said, "Looks like you have asthma." She gave me some inhalant medication. Seemed to help a little bit. Took some x-rays. Called me Monday afternoon and said, "There's something on your lungs. You need to go to a pulmonary specialist." So I went the next morning. And all the while, I'm so weak I can hardly get around, but I'm traveling around New York on the subways and the taxis. And he slapped the x-rays up on the board. Now this is a man whose bedside manner is practically non-existent. And he said, "Yep, that looks like pneumocystis. That's the kind of pneumonia you have when you got AIDS."
Very subtle.
Subtle. I was in shock, absolute shock, and fear. Fear popped in immediately.
Within days, his condition worsened. A concert was canceled, a new doctor was located, new tests were given. The results were not what White Eagle hoped for.
So they did that, and the test came back positive. It was pneumocystis. He said, "From all indications and from all the tests, this is what I believe, that you have AIDS." So I began to think in those terms. I began to practice the 12 steps in regard to AIDS. I am powerless over AIDS and my life is unmanageable. I come to believe there's a power greater than AIDS. I turn my life over to that power now. And on and on. And it started working. I was out of the hospital in 10 days, not 25 like he said. And I had been counseling my parents. An event is only an event. It's what I do with the event that matters. I have come to believe that an event is only an event. It's neither good nor bad. It is my response to that event that makes it good or bad. And I started to cry. I was sitting in this truck. I had to pull off on the road. And I cried there for 45 minutes. Just sobbed. Sobbed. That was the first stage of my breaking out of my denial. About 4 in the morning, I stopped at a payphone and called my sponsor, Kathy. And when I heard her voice, I just sobbed again. I couldn't even make sounds, words. It was just awful. And finally, I got out, "Kathy, I have to talk to you, but I have to do it in person. Can you come to New York?" She said, "No, I can't come to New York, but you can come to Detroit." So they bought me a ticket and flew me to Detroit. And by this time, I was so far out of denial. When we got in the car, I said, "Look, I have AIDS." And she said, "We thought so." And I've had many experiences since then.
But you'd reached the point of acceptance,
Yes.
which is the beginning of growth.
Oh, yes, it is. You can't have anything without acceptance.
So since then, you've been continuing treatment.
Yes, I
Yeah.
take AZT and some of the other drugs. I take some drugs for my dementia. Dementia is a disease of the brain, and it creates delusionary thoughts and ideas.
You were in treatment, And then you went back into the hospital?
Yes. Yes, I was in Mount Sinai Hospital in the psych ward. Don't ever spend a month in a psych ward. Or it'll drive you crazy if you're not already.
But that was the dementia part of the AIDS? Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Then, after that, you came back to South Dakota?
Came back home to South Dakota to spend time with my mom and dad, my brother Robert, and we had a great time.
Eagle, we often hear one of the problems that people who find out they have AIDS have is the sharing and telling their parents about it, their family about it. Did you have some of those feelings?
I was scared to death. I went home, and I'm sure they knew something was up, but they didn't know what. The hardest thing about telling your parents you have AIDS is trying to convince them that you're Haitian. When a parent finds out you have AIDS, if they don't already know, they've got two things to deal with. First, that you're going to die. Second, that you're gay, or you're a drug abuser. So parents have a hard time dealing with all of this. My parents, my father especially, just is so strong and so masterful at handling and dealing with his emotions. We were in a lawyer's office just the other day, signing a, what is that called? Power of attorney, a durable power of attorney, so that when I'm no longer competent to make my own decisions, my parents can make them for me. And he had to leave the room because he was crying. And he regained himself and came back in and finished up. It's very difficult for everyone, not just for me, but for them too.
And that's where that underlying love of the parent comes through.
Yes.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that. It's very sad.
We had just finished having dinner. We were sitting around the dinner table one evening, and we had just finished having dinner when he broke the news to us. I guess it wasn't really a shock because he had been ill, and we knew that something was going on. But it certainly was devastating. And of course, the first thing that came to my mind was, how long am I going to keep you? How long are you going to be around with us? And I guess that was really the first thing that came to my mind. I don't want to lose you.
I want all parents to know that your child, whether he's sick or not, is worthy of a parental love and support.
But there are men whose families have turned them onto the streets. It is very frightening to see how much ignorance there still is and how much people still are not acknowledging about AIDS.
I think we should talk about that. You know, people have so many misunderstandings about how you get AIDS.
You can get AIDS two ways: through direct blood contact, through the use of needles, intravenous drug needles, and through sex. And that's it.
Who gets AIDS? Just opera singers?
Yeah, just opera singers. Everyone. It goes across the board. AIDS does not have a barrier limit.
It doesn't really respect age or station or anything.
No, it does not. There's old people with AIDS, there's young people with AIDS, there's basketball players with AIDS, probably more than we know. It's not going to go away.
And AIDS itself is a virus.
Yes. The virus is called HIV, and that's really the disease. AIDS are the diseases that we get because the T cell counts are low and They can't protect our other red blood cells from these opportunistic diseases.
Eagle, people who get involved, become afflicted by these very devastating diseases, go through a lot of emotions. And I know from working with many chemically dependent people and cancer patients that the similarities are so close. I think it would be well for people to understand some of the emotions that you experienced. I wonder, like fear, resentments.
Fear is the biggest one. And resentment, of course. Why me? Why am I the one? I've got things to do with my life. I've got this great voice. Why should I have to be the one to have this disease? And then overwhelming joy because I do have the disease. I can do something about it. I can talk to people about it. I can share my life experience about it. So that the emotions run the gamut from one end to the other. Sometimes in a matter of seconds, they'll run through fast.
And you found that the principles of the philosophy of AA really help in dealing with the emotional part of the disease?
Yes.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for my full year in AA before I got this disease, I'd be drunk and lying in a street somewhere. I can't do anything about last week, or last year, or 5 years ago. It happened, and I'm grateful it happened because it brought me to where I am today, but I can't change it. The future is out. God didn't say, I will be. The past is out. God didn't say I was. God said I am, so all I have is today.
When I in awesome wonder consider all the worlds thy hands have made, I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe display. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art! Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art! How great thou art!
Well, you indicated earlier that you were in very difficult shape, tough shape when you got out of Mount Sinai,
Yes,
and that must have been a tough time.
it was. It was a very tough time. My parents didn't know what to do with me. They called my parents and said, you have to come get him because he's not going to make it out of this. So I literally went home to die. There was a woman, Linda Vargas, on my reservation, who prayed and fasted for me for 14 days. And it was during those 14 days that I started to come out of it. It's power in prayer.
I guess I just wonder, because I think everybody has down times, and with all you're carrying, even though you've got a tremendous spirit and tremendous program, there are those periods,
Yes.
I would expect. And I wonder if you could share with us some of the things, the techniques or the tools that you use to get through those times.
Well, sometimes I just sit down and cry.
That's probably a good answer.
And cry. Because it's so hard. To know you're going to die is as hard as it is easy. I planned my life much better than I did before. I think of things to do with my life, with my friends, with my family. I have slips occasionally. You know, I slipped up the other day. And, but I'm grateful that God doesn't count them, you know?
He's a better scorekeeper than we are. He doesn't keep score.
Oh, much better, much better.
But again, I think it pays to emphasize the fact that we have been given a way of life, a program, tools to
Yes.
help us through those times if we can
Yes.
somehow grab onto them and focus on that.
That's right. That's right.
Eagle, there'll be people that maybe have some worry or thought that they might have AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
What are some steps they or family members should take if the family member has concern? And I'm thinking now, you know, the old alcoholism problems.
Yes. The first step is to sit down and talk with the person. Not necessarily an intervention, because it's not really that drastic. The second step is to get tested for HIV. And the third step is to do something about it once you're positive. We've had a lot of problem on the reservation with people becoming fearful. One of the boys came back with AIDS, and his office tried to fire him, but of course they couldn't. So they put his desk in the middle of the room and put everybody else on the outside of the room.
Oh.
And that's humiliating. Just humiliating. I don't know if it's any better yet or not, but it was a horrible thing to do.
That doesn't encourage people to seek knowledge and help.
No, no, it
The
doesn't.
stigma.
If they do that to him, what are they going to do to me?
Right, yeah. Yeah.
So I don't want to know.
In that regard, where do we go from here? I know there's a lot of efforts being made to raise the awareness.
Yes, there is.
And of course, that's what you're so graciously helping us do today with this program. What several things, or one thing, would you like to tell, number one, the people who are suffering with AIDS, number two, the family around them, number three, the general public, about the whole subject?
If you're suffering with AIDS, don't suffer anymore. Put the suffering behind you and move on with your life. You still have so much life to live and so much to give. It's okay to hurt. It's okay to feel the pain. It's okay to cry. But don't stop living. That is worse than death itself. If you're a family member, be supportive. My mother's here today. She's supportive of me. She knows when I make mistakes. She knows when I do stupid things. She loves me anyway. She supports me anyway.
I would like to see other parents be supportive of their sons or daughters, any member of their family. Brothers or sisters, I would like to see them be supportive of their family, to show them their love. I know that even though some parents have outcasted their children, there's still that love there. And I think they have to nurture that love and bring it back and show it to their family.
So you probably would be very happy if someone watching or listening would suddenly pick up the phone and call their son or daughter and say, look, I still love you and I really want to see you.
Absolutely. That's the best thing that any mother or father, brother, sister could do, is to encourage that child to come back home. At least let them know that the home doors are open.
Right.
An expression that could be apropos here is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And he's been a very spiritual being. His, the qualities that he shows are compassion, love, and interest in people. And I think that, for me, it becomes one of the major things in his life that I'm happy about.
The external things that happen to us are not happening to our spirits, our souls, just our bodies. And this body is not who I am. I'm White Eagle, a free spirit.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, Thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. And when I am tempted and trials come my way, this blessed assurance controls that Jesus is mine, and He cares for His own. So I say, it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. It is well with my soul.
Berica House could be an answer for you if you or someone you love is living with AIDS. Berica House is a group home for men and women living with AIDS who have become disabled from the effects of the virus. For more information about Berica House or about AIDS, call 605-332-4017.